Hi everyone, thank you very much for stopping by and returning to the old world. Today we are returning to our look at the options available to the budding Imperial General. And this time we are turning our attention to the flower of Imperial chivalry, the Empire Knights. Now these knights do technically come in a number of different flavours. You've got your regular knights, your knights of the inner circle, you've got your demigryph knights. But your inner circle knights and demigryph knights, although connected to regular knights through the lore, they are selected from your special options. They're looking at playing a different role on the table. They're looking at competing with other units when you're putting your list together. So today we're focusing purely on the regular Imperial Knight. Before we launch into looking at the stats and the rules, etc. for the knights themselves, let's think about the core tax. So the Empire forces, I think, very much pay a core tax. This is the 25% of your total points available to you for a game that has to be spent on core units. What are the knights competing with in this category? Well, for each full 1,000 points you're playing at, so for example, a 2,000 point game, you would be able to have 0 to 2 of this unit. It's the veteran state troopers. And I've done a video on veteran state troopers and state troopers already. State troopers also being an unlimited option for the core choice. On top of that, you've got missile troops. So these are the guys armed with crossbows and handguns. And you've also got the militia, so a unit armed with 2 hand weapons and a throwing weapon. Finally, last but not least, you have the Imperial Archer. So you'll have noticed what we're looking at here is a range of close combat units and shooting units, but everything apart from the knight is an infantryman. Really, that's the starting standout point, I think, for the knights, and something to bear in mind when thinking about as a whole how you want your army to look and how you're intending to use the force. So let's look at those knights. Stat-wise, they're slightly above average. They've got a weapon skill of 4, strength toughness of 3, 1 wound, 1 attack, 3 initiative, and 8 leadership. With heavy armour, barding, and a shield, they come in with a 3+ save at a cost of 21 points a model. Movement-wise, they are reliant on the Imperial Warhorse, which has a movement value of 7. Now, I think one of the things that's really useful when we're thinking about Imperial Knights is to think about other factions that have directly comparable units. And in this case, Bretonnians have knights which are incredibly similar. You've got the Knights of the Realm, who have the same weapon skill 4. They've got a slightly lower ballistic skill, but that is irrelevant because none of these people are using missile weapons. So it's weapon skill 4, ballistic skill 2, strength toughness of 3, the same as the Knights of the Empire, 1 wound, initiative 3, 1 attack, 8 leadership, same 3-up armor save, but for a cost of 24 points. The reason for that cost is they've got access to a better horse and they've got slightly better rules built into them, and we'll come on to that in just a second. Just to round off this comparison, we should probably also look at the Bretonnian Knights Errant. Weapon skill 3, so 1 pip less, and a 1 pip less leadership at leadership 7. Otherwise, stats are the same as the Bretonnian Knight of the Realm. They come in at 19 points per model. Again, access to the better horse, but really the difference is when it comes to the special rules. When it comes to equipping your knights, they come with a couple of different options. So you can arm them with a lance or a great weapon at a +1 point. That is +1 point if you have the great weapon and keep the shield. If you take a great weapon and drop the shield, they're going to stay the same, 21 points. So I think whether you want them lance armed or great weapon armed, having that 3+ save is really helpful in providing a little bit of survivability on the way in. So I think realistically we're looking at a 22 points per model unit before any other grades such as command options, magic items, stuff like that. So let's turn our attention to the unit special rules. Empire Knights, they're close order cavalry. It's what you'd expect for heavy cavalry. They've got counter charge. really useful rule. It gives them a bit of survivability against enemy cavalry, chariots, stuff like that, because they can also get an initiative bonus by launching a countercharge and get the strength bonus if they're using lances as well. They've got first charge, helping them break enemy rank bonuses, and swift stride, giving them an extra little bit of legs in order to make those longer charges. Again, how does this compare with Bretonnia? Well, the Knights Errant, they've got Blessing of the Lady, which gives them, assuming the army has given up the first turn, a 6-up ward save or a 5-up ward save against particularly powerful attacks. Again, they've got Close Order, they've got Finest Warhorse, so this comes into them having access to a better horse. First charge, same as the Imperial Knights. Impetuous, so there's a real risk Knights Errant could go charging off against something you don't want them to be charging, disrupting your line. They've got the Lance formation. It's a really good formation. It means that Bretonnian Knights can operate in much smaller windows of space. This means you can get a unit and characters on flyers, for example, in on the target much easier than you can with a regular ranked up unit, maximising the amount of damage that you can put out. They've also got Swift Stride and Knight Vow. So overall, it's a reasonable package of special rules. Knights of the Realm, pretty much the same, with the exception, take away Impetuous and give them countercharge. So I can see why Knights of the Realm are a little bit more expensive, at 24 points to 21 points per model, before any upgrades, etc., because the special rules just make them that little bit more effective. But overall, I don't think, based on this, that actually the Imperial Knights are poorly costed at all when you've got this direct comparison. One thing that is worth noting about Imperial Knights is for every full 1,000 points of your army, so again, if you're playing a 1,000 point game, 0 to 1 knight unit can do this, you can give an upgrade to your knight to either have the drilled special rule or the stubborn special rule. Stubborn costs 2 points a model, and let's face it, you don't want these guys in a long drawn out fight. I don't think this is a special rule that will see a lot of use, particularly as I think it'll get a little bit on the costly side. Drilled, however, is another matter entirely. So we've just had the FAQ clarification around how drilled works, and we now know that we can definitely use drilled before a charge. So what does this mean in reality? It means turn 1, your knights can start in march column. They can go flying up the board to be in a position where they can threaten enemy units without being threatened themselves, unless there's lots of cavalry floating around. Turn 2, they can shift formation and charge despite having started the turn in a marching column and really get to grips with the enemy early doors. If the dice go against them in a combat and they're falling back in good order, they can use drilled as well to reform. Again, a way of maximising the amount of attacks they can put out. So overall, I think this is looking like a really useful rule. 1 point a model, definitely worth the investment. So having said all of that, what do I think overall? I think, and certainly from my experience, having one attack is a massive problem for the Knights, and they need support. There's a real opportunity that they'll whiff. Even with weapon skill 4, I think there's a lot of weapon skill 4 out there. A lot of the time they're going to be hitting on no better than a 50% chance. So if you're only putting out 5, 6 attacks, maybe 7 attacks, you're only going to be landing two or three of those, maybe only killing 1 or 2 models. That's not what you need from Knights. You need them to go in and hit things hard on the charge. So I think they really need support. Although that's something that's generally true of core choices, if you want these guys to have an impact, they're going to need backing up. In Warhammer Fantasy Battle Days, my go-to for this would have been a Warrior Priest of Sigmar, giving the unit hatred, so they have those rerolls to hit was hugely beneficial. That's not something they've got access to now, so definitely need to give a bit more thought around what sort of support they're given. Combat character, is it spells, is it the magic standard? They can have a 25-point magic standard. Maybe the champion has a small magic item. Not so sure that's viable because you want to be charging. You probably want to be charging with lances. But yeah, definitely need to think about how you're supporting them and making sure that when they hit home hard. So overall, what do I think about them? Well, we need to turn our attention back to the fact that knights are a core choice, and they're the only cavalry core choice that you've got. So if you want a very mobile force with lots of outriders, inner circle, demigriffs, steam tank, stuff like that, you're not going to be able to use the infantry really to get in at the same time as the rest of your army. They're not going to have the mobility options. Yes, they're going to be potentially good at staying back, protecting artillery lines, things like that. So there's definitely a place for them if you can find a way of getting the most out of them. But if you want a very fast-moving force, then knights are definitely going to be the core choice you go for. I've had some success with knights in fighting enemy units, getting the charge off, managing to take out that fighting rank, which is great for survivability because no attacks are coming back. And then over the course of a couple of rounds of combat with full backing good orders happening and counting as charging repeatedly, particularly with character support, able to break enemy units down and get some results. In fact, I'd go as far as to say I think of the core choices, the most success I've had with those units has been with the knight. So definitely something I think a lot of players will be looking at in order to fill out that core tax. So there we go, my thoughts on the Imperial Knights. If you found this video useful, do consider checking out my other dives into other units, including the Imperial Army list. It's an ongoing project I'm picking up from time to time, looking at each one in turn. I've also done a video on advice on using artillery, if that floats your boat, or perhaps sinks your opponents. All that remains for me to say is thank you for listening. If you've enjoyed this video, do consider dropping a subscribe. It's the best way of helping a small channel such as this one. I am Return to the Old World. Have a great day.